All right, hello everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you. We're really excited to be here. My name is Amali and I'm the events director here at Books Are Magic. We are so excited to have José, Vadi, and José with us tonight to celebrate the launch of José's newest essay collection, Chipped, Writing from a Skateboarder's Lens. Before we officially get started, I just have a few logistics to point out for how tonight's event is going to go. First up, we will be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the discussion, so please start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them. After the talk tonight, José will be around to sign and personalize your books at the table next to where you checked in. We'll let you know where and when to start lining up for that. And lastly, if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we would love to encourage you to buy a copy of Chipped online using the link in the live stream description. Okay, now let's get into this. For José, skateboarding isn't just a sport or a hobby, but a ritual and a portal that allows him to navigate the world on his own terms. These essays explore the myriad ways in which skateboarding influences art, music, culture, and power, and the chipped edges and boards we all carry with us as we drift through the world. And a bit about tonight's authors. José Vadi is the author of Chipped and Interstate Essays from California. An award-winning essayist, poet, playwright, and film producer, his work has been featured by the Paris Review, The Atlantic, the PBS NewsHour, Free Skate Magazine, Alta Journal of California, and the Yale Review. He lives and writes in Sacramento, California. And as I mentioned earlier, José joins José in conversation tonight. Hua is the author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning memoir Stay True, is a staff writer at The New Yorker and a professor of literature at Bard College. He serves on the executive board of the Asian American Writers Workshop and lives here in Brooklyn, New York with his family. That's all for me. Please join me in giving José and Hua a very warm welcome.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for coming out. Thanks to Books Are Magic for having us. I'm just gonna start us off with a little reading. This is my second book. It's called Chipped, and I'll be reading from the title essay. All right. I skated my favorite deck so long that its final abused form was a mangled rocket ship. All deformed, bruised nose and short, flattened tail, I rode that baby blue board off sets of stairs and loading docks for months. Slid it across curbs and benches, threw it in the bushes to enter places that didn't allow skateboards, returning to find it lying there, undisturbed and unwanted by those unfamiliar with its magic potential. It was a shop board sold by my local utility board shop, the store's logo just above the 4 drill marks, 2x2 for the back truck's base plate and the hardware holding it together. The L utility was given an Olympic torch treatment. It was probably skinny as hell for the era and my age, less than 8 inches wide and perfect for a 13-year-old. Shop boards were cheaper than pro boards and slightly more expensive than factory blanks, since they were dipped in a coat of paint and maybe had the shop's logo slapped on somewhere painfully obvious. Growing up, I consistently rode shop boards because of their price point. Big-footed, lanky, and tall, I hit puberty at the same time as I developed my fervent appreciation for skateboarding, with more and more boards snapped upon impact. The girls' skateboards, Guy Mariano Pro Board with the Italian flag, snapped trying a kickflip down the 5-stair at Laverne's Municipal Water Treatment Building. The Adrian Lopez Pro Model Zero skateboards deck with the horseman drawing, snapped on a ledge trick 1 week into ownership, before I could even chip the board by accident. But it was this sky blue shop board that felt so proper, so intrinsic to my skateboarding at the time that upgrading to a new board and discarding whatever opportunities the shop board still held seemed akin to self-harm. We had learned how to coexist for this many weeks, months after all. Why not see how long it would last? Fear of change is both superstition and microcosm, an approach to the tools of our joy that says something about what those joyful dimensions really look and feel like. Skaters approach each trick attempt with muscle memory and a confidence affected by cracks of the sidewalk, sirens on the street, and fear. With every board, we create a ledger of everything learned and experienced upon it. The more centered the middle board marks, the better the board slides. Front truck hangers jaggedly destroyed in a 45-degree pattern showcase attempted crooked grinds. I liked writing random crap on my stickers as they got shredded, or at my most dreamy scrawling Carpe Diem in whiteout on the grip tape just above the back truck along the side, as if I would forget to seize the day at age 12, 13, and beyond, let alone for something as addictive as skateboarding. Now I consider why I didn't get a better used deck or save for a clean, new version of a toy I used every day. A toy that can travel across time and space, measure how fast my body can adjust to a crack before the takeoff point at the top of some stairs, or muscle through a grind along a worn, chewed concrete ledge. So much of discovering actual core skateboarding is literally acquiring its component parts. Before I could afford skate shops, I found most of my first pairs of trucks, sets of wheels, and even shoes through friends. We would also identify each other by our bruises and scabs on the elbows that indicated regular or goofy-footed, the torn sneakers, the arm cast and finger splints, or in my case, crutches from a sprained knee. They'd hand me down or resell Thunder Trucks, Costin Pro model shoes. The toes chipped away on the side of my weaker lead foot afforded the shoes a second life on a skater with a different stance. But chipping a board is a natural part of skating. A chip is a small piece of board that breaks off around the nose or tail from the wear and tear of skateboarding. Novice or pro skaters will ride chipped boards, but when you're a kid, chipping a board is your rite of passage. Without disposable income, kids ride boards until they nearly disintegrate, the grip tape all mashed up and jangled along the edges where wood used to be. Filling in the chips keeps the board going as long as possible. It's a symbol of the stubborn dedication to a deck and to a toy as skaters and as adults whose bodies will also reach their inevitable end. But the toy evolves beyond a fad and becomes something more, a compass, a lens, a portal to joy only found by trying and failing along the way. The irony is the older I get, the more I empathize with those chipped boards I had as a kid, hiding marks and blemishes while maintaining the semblance of a skater as an adult, not wanting to be discarded, wanting to still be seen as useful, functional, and skating, bruised and chipped for as long as possible. Make some noise for Wad. How's it going?
Good.
Good to see you.
Good. Good to see you too. Even if I didn't know you, I'd know you were from California by the sonorous way in which you just read. You've been in New York since Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
What do you miss about California right now? What do you miss in California right now?
The ability to see a mountain, you know what I mean? Like a foothill. That sounds kind of cool right now. Maybe a redwood. But I mean, it's really nice being here, and it's beautiful, and it's, I don't know, I haven't been here since maybe 2015, 2016. So a lot has changed in Brooklyn. I think I'm stating the obvious for many in the audience, but a lot has changed, so it's just really nice to be here.
Well, it's great that you're here. I love the book. I love your first book as well. It's about California, for those of you who haven't had a chance to read it. And I'm glad you read the passage just now because it sort of gets into what the title means. And I was wondering, like, you know, the idea of the chipped board, it seems to have this metaphorical resonance throughout the book, just beyond being a skater and sort of understanding what those marks might entail. But how do you see the idea of the chipped board or of chipping as a sort of like larger metaphor?
Yeah, I think like the metaphor was really based heavily on reality, like this kind of hoarder mentality that skateboarders often have, where we kind of hold on to our old goods, like our old decks, especially the older you get. Like there's this kind of like this not wanting to, whether that board was limited edition or of a certain era, it represents a certain time or a certain kind of period. And so the older I got and the more I moved, I had to move all of this hoarder crap everywhere I went, which is like boxes, you know, just total bins.
Wow, I can't imagine that.
Right, you know, a lot of decks, a lot of just old ephemera, a lot of old torn t-shirts and stuff, but it all represented a very specific time, and skateboarding is a very young culture, you know, and street skateboarding in particular is from the 80s to the present, so it's extremely young, and historicizing it as an individual is part of what skaters do. I feel like all skaters are archivists. If you show them a photo of a certain ledge in Barcelona, they can tell you 25 tricks that went down on it, you know, and that begins with the material. I think, in my opinion, like it kind of started with just me hoarding and realizing like I need to let go of some of this crap.
Like, how many decks do you have?
Well, at my parents' house in Los Angeles, we have several. We have like a stack, and then in my house, we have like, the past 5 years of decks probably. Some are snapped, some are functioning,
I
some
don't
are
know
not.
how many. I don't know how many that would be.
Oh, that brings me like 2 stacks,
Okay.
like that high. And then there's like magazines, and then there's skate videos. So you're kind of wrestling with all this ephemera, and that's increasingly kind of almost like surrounding you as you get older as a skater. And so you have to give some of that up. So I started thinking more and more like, why are all these like chips terrible? Like, why did I skate this particular board that looks absolutely unrideable for X amount of years in certain amounts of time, and why do I still hold on to it today? But it kind of just became this simple that when you start to think about how you identify skateboarders, whether it's torn shoes or scabs on their elbows or just the the kind of wear and tear that they're almost presenting, it kind of created a nice symbol for me to write from. I needed something to kind of encapsulate. Writing about skateboarding was the challenge, and so having that North Star helped me organize everything under it.
So early on in the book, you write that skaters are, quote, hesitant to write about skateboarding.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, and why is that? I see someone nodding. By the way, there's seats up here if anyone standing doesn't want to stand.
I don't know. I feel like there's a couple different reasons. I think for many years the skate industry itself wasn't really a proponent of talking about skateboarding intellectually or in a way that had any type of like emotion to it. It was just like, shut up and skate. Everything's gnarly. Isn't this rad? And that's great. A lot of skaters aren't buying magazines necessarily for the articles per se. But then over the years, you start to see, I think a lot of skaters began trying to kind of articulate whether it's their local scene or whether it's their, trying to articulate not only the act and, how that can look on the page, but what it means to a skater to learn how to push, to learn how to skate switch or to learn how to, do a proper kickflip. There's like kind of like this cultural hesitancy. And, most of skateboarding magazines are predicated on marketing. Like all the skate ads that present skateboarding to you are also presenting a company to you that you want to buy. So most of skateboarding that we consume is inherently advertising that we want to see and digest. But editorially, there weren't more like over the past couple of years, I think social media really engendered a more globalized view of skating, more publications being published outside of America, and more of online kind of filling in the gaps that print didn't have for us growing up, allowed skaters to start communicating with each other and start, whether through essays or through commentaries about skate parts. And so there's been more and more kind of commentary about it, and I think it's encouraged a lot of writers that may have been thinking about this stuff before to kind of start, trying. And similar to a trick, like trying to learn how to write about this thing that we all care about so much, we all fear reading something extremely cringe about it because we are so misrepresented in mainstream media. Every photo in the New York Times or like ESPN.com is like, the angles suck, like nothing works, nothing looks good, like it's in Thrasher or something. So we're so triggered and ready to be misrepresented that I think that also held us back in terms of wanting to write about it.
Do you remember things that you read? I mean, because I imagine even in those magazines that were meant to market, there were, even if by accident, like cool phrases or just sort of ways of describing things that really kind of expanded your mind. But what are some of the things that you read that did make you feel excited or did make you think there's a different way to do this?
Totally. It's interesting. Like Thrasher's captions are very much like the voice of Thrasher. Like in a line or two, they can deliver this very, Thrasher sounding thing that makes, like Jim Greco delivers a hammer down the Hollywood 16. You're like, oh, one liner that sounds just badass and cool, right? But then, like say a Transworld skateboarding magazine, they might have more record reviews or more like editorial about the news of skateboarding. And so you start to follow like, oh, this guy, Andreas Troelf, really does good record reviews around bands that I like. Or, oh, they interviewed Fugazi and this writer also interviewed this band. And so you start to kind of, like a lot of the journalists from Transworld Skateboarding 20 years ago in Soft School's like previous iteration, there was an anthology called From the Deep End that like Michael Burnett and Andreas Troelf and Jocko Weiland and all these kind of skate writers that had some stuff in skate magazines. They had to do stuff on their own and do stuff outside of skateboarding and kind of bring skaters into like publishing houses and stuff like that. But through skate mags and kind of reading the articles and kind of reading the record reviews and seeing the consistency of the writers across publications, I got to like, find the voices that really inspired me. One of which was a former pro skateboarder, Clyde Singleton. He had Clyde's Corner was this like super hyperbolic him talking shit about the industry, and that never happened before. But like through a print article in circa 2005, you start to see more of that criticism by folks just trying and just taking a stab at it.
Now, one of the things I really love about your writing in Interstate and also this is just the sort of spatiality of it. Like, I feel like I understand the city, a block, a curb, a region more through your eyes. I'm wondering, since you've been here for the past few days skating, like how would you contrast skating in New York versus in the Bay Area?
I would lovingly say that street skating in New York is terrible. You know what I mean? Like it's like the ground sucks, the ledges suck, everything's dry as hell, it's hot as hell, the pollen sucks. But that's what makes New York.
Sounds like you're running away from a challenge.
I know. Yeah. And that's the challenge. Like everything looks so amazing on footage in New York, and when you actually see the spots or encounter them, you realize how difficult everything is. So to make it as a pro skateboarder or as an amateur skateboarder, as a flow kid in New York, whatever status, or as just a citizen, you know, like doing anything is that much more amazing. And coming from Southern California school guards at school, yards that are perfectly, paved and no cracks inside, and it's a different experience out here. But that's what makes skateboarding out here amazing. And then once you one subway stop will have like 10 spots within a couple blocks radius, and you can walk and run around the city in ways that you can to a degree in San Francisco, but not necessarily in even Oakland or Los Angeles.
So you have this great essay, Spot Check, where you're sort of like looking at these spots. Like, how have you been figuring out where to skate the past few days?
Well, shout out to Quarter Snacks. Quarter Snacks is an amazing publication based here in New York. It started around, I think maybe like 20 years ago at this point, in the early 2000s. It's a website dated, I think I'm quoting their lead when they say that they're dedicated to New York skateboarding and degeneracy is their byline. But they have an amazing resource on quartersnacks.com that for any and all skateboarders or readers that are curious, that has a map of some active and defunct spots in New York City, as well as skate shops and stuff like that. But even with that, where you have like a list of pins in front of you, even just walking around the city, you begin to see different spots that may not be like, that may not be on that map. So you start to see the relationship between how in a single day or within an hour, a skater can conceivably move between like these two subway stops and all these different spots. Yeah.
So in the book you write about, like when you were probably around the time of that excerpt you read, teenager, sort of venturing out, meeting folks, just sort of like getting the lay of the land, and that you were inculcated into like the rules of the street and just sort of things that you were allowed to do and not do. Can you talk a bit more about that and sort of the things that you learned as a young person, just skating in the streets?
Yeah, skating, I grew up in LA, and I grew up and then skateboarding in the Bay Area too was very two different worlds. And I think in LA, like there was a lot of etiquette in terms of just understanding how to engage with a shared spot if we're all using this resource together. And this kind of overlaps with graffiti culture in a lot of ways too, but kind of understanding the rules of engagement of a certain skate spot, whether it's skaters or other like inliners or BMXers, just kind of understanding the body language, who's trying to like really nail a trick, like maybe let them go do their thing and kind of hang out in the background until it's your turn, so to speak, even though there's no official order. But that said, like those rules of engagement have, for me, totally changed as like an old head in like a post-social media society where like you show up to a spot and there's 3 or 4 different heads like filming themselves on tripods, and you're just like trying to navigate to do anything. So it speaks to the spatial relationship where skaters can almost tell like this guy's close to their trick or this person's close to their landing their thing. I'll stay out of the way and go handle this other side of the spot. But it also speaks to the other forces of power you engage while you're outside. It's not just skaters, it's police, it's concerned citizens, quote unquote. It's other folks that assert power on the street. And so it's understanding those rules of engagement too, of like in certain parts of LA in the 90s, it was like what colors cannot wear in certain schoolyards when I'm gonna go skate this spot. Lockwood Elementary in mid-city LA is infamous for being like overlapped in the Rampart scandal and all the gangs in there. So being aware of where you're at as a skater and as a person. I was learning all that at the same time of just where I am in this world and how skateboarding is helping like literally propel me through it, but also the moments in which you're kind of almost criminalized yet again as a skater or a person of color on the street when you engage with cops, or the times when just the different rules of engagement of the streets also lead to engaging with different forms of power. Yeah.
No, there's a part in your book about poetry, and you write, I started writing poems around the time I started skating, probably because skating got me outside. I remember answering people when they asked why or what I was writing, and I was trying to describe the feeling skateboarding gave me. Can you talk a bit more about that relationship between writing and skating? Like, are you thinking about writing when you're actually out there, like, and thinking about like, how will I one day describe this, or are they just sort of two completely different forms of craft for you?
It's probably like singing along to songs, like rap lyrics, you know what I mean? And I think like the songs that I heard in skate videos, like a Guru lyric from a Gangstar song, like Gangstar was in a lot of skate videos at this time, like having those songs in my head and skating and then experiencing that energy that I wanted to describe later. I think it was just like when I got home, I had all this excitement, and I just went out all day, and like my parents don't understand what the hell I'm talking about, and my sister's like, I don't know, like what do I do with all this energy, and I can't go back outside again. So I think that led me to like journaling and watching even more skate videos. Like if I can't go outside and skate, I will watch people outside skateboarding on TV, I think it was just really experiencing joy for the first time, and a joy that like I created for myself. It wasn't, you do that as a kid, building forts and doing all this other stuff, right? But like when you're outside and engaging with the world and doing something that's new and something that's very interesting, similar to starting your own band and kind of playing your first show, it's like you're asserting yourself in space in a different context. And I think poetry was attractive because it related to hip hop, but also it was a little more abstract and a little more free form, and allowed me to kind of just express versus having to like build a narrative or tell or show anything. It was just more like, I just want to express this thing very poorly at the age of 13, but just trying to get that energy out there. And yeah, I think that's really what motivated me to start writing.
Did writing, obviously it could never capture the same degree of like death-defying thrill, but does it also like unlock a kind of joy for you?
Yeah, I think that was my frustration with Interstate. It was like I really liked writing Interstate, but I don't know if I was finding joy writing it. You know what I mean? Like it was very therapeutic and it was very like balming and comforting, but I feel like Chipped, I really wanted to feel like joy in the writing as much as possible. And I feel like I had that maybe when I was doing spoken word like many years ago, with some people in the audience potentially. And but I really wanted skateboarding to, I really wanted the writing to be joyous, and I wanted to like have fun writing this stuff, and challenge myself to do that. And I feel like that was a big goal of Chipped, was to make not only skateboarding fun in my mind's eye, but also just make writing as fun as possible too. Like if these are two things that I very much love and that have kind of coexisted with each other for so many years now, like I had to make this joyful.
So speaking of joy and joyful noises, I feel like there's a part of the book that I can tell you had a lot of fun with. And I remember when you sent me the galley, I was like, where the hell is this going? This particular essay. And it starts, Sun Ra is my favorite skater of all time, and I've never seen him skate, nor do I have any evidence that one of the most under-recognized and greatest jazz musicians, performers, and composers of all time was indeed a skateboarder. But his heel flips, I imagine, are flicked, lofted, caught, and landed with such immeasurable style that he can only be number one in my heart. And it's an entire essay sort of presupposing if Sun Ra was a skater. Can you talk about sort of what compelled you to explore this relationship between, one of the great avant-garde geniuses of our time, and also who probably had no relationship to this other sort of avant-garde art form?
Yeah, thanks for reading that. That essay is called King Shit, or Can a King Be a King? During the pandemic, I got really into Sun Ra and the Sun Ra Orchestra, and going through a discography that starts in the 50s to present. It's a great pandemic activity. And I was also skating a parking lot at a subway stop in the Bay Area a lot. And this relationship between like listening to a lot of Sun Ra and then go skating all day, just kind of, that was like my duality for like most of 2020, was just like listening to Sun Ra at the bookends of the day and then going skating. And then it kind of just, I feel like sometimes skaters make these jokes amongst skaters where they see like a basketball player do a certain thing, or I don't know, maybe like even a personality say something at a podium and they're like, that's a skater, you know what I mean? Like a skater would do some shit like that, you know what I mean? And so like taking that kind of little inside joke on steroids.
Wait, can you unpack that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so let's say Anthony Edwards has a game for the Minnesota
Right.
Timberwolves, or say, let's go local, say Jalen Brunson has an amazing game for the New York Knickerbockers and like, you know, just destroys it, right? And he has like he shoots a three and he walks away without seeing it go in. Some skater shit. You're just like that's him. He knows it. He doesn't need to, like, you don't even need to film this trick. Like, I got it. It's amazing, you know?
What NBA player is the least skater then?
Oh, man.
Who would be the antithesis of...
This is a fantastic question.
Gobert.
Yo, man. Rudy Gobert.
He's suffered enough.
He's suffered enough. Who's the least skater? Probably, I don't know. That's a, we'll get back to
We can
that.
come back to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sun Ra...
Yeah, so it's just kind of like that kind of joke of like, well, if Sun Ra was a skater, what would that look like? And I think other skate companies have made like Sun Ra imagery and like kind of like that concept of astral projection of like your body going to another space and time. Like, however trippy that sounds, like skaters, I mean, kind of believe in that, you know, we're willingly jumping down 20 stair handrails and doing all sorts of crap. Like that's insane compared to someone who's dressed like he was born on Saturn and playing music, you know? So it was just kind of taking that to the nth degree and really just, you know, if skaters are considered are creatives, you know, at the very least, let alone artists, but if they're considered creatives, how are they in conversation with not only like graffiti writers and b-boys and dancers, but is skateboarding a dance, and just kind of thinking about all these kind of ideas. And then just saying, fuck it, Sun Ra's my skater. In my head, he's on this team. He's goofy-footed. He skates this way, and just owning that, and almost like superimposing him on certain skate videos that I've watched. Like, you know, it was very trendy to skate cars in contests in the '90s. So like, what would that look like of him, like blasting tricks over
What does
cars?
that mean?
So like a car would be an obstacle in the middle of a contest. Like
I mean like
imagine
an automobile.
like an automobile, and you would put like ramps to either side, and you would do tricks over it. So like, Sun Ra maybe not need a ramp. Maybe you can just boost over that thing with just the strength. So I don't know, just having fun with it and like thinking about representation as well, you know, and how Sun Ra was often misrepresented, or you know, critics hated him, or you know, was very much seen as like this other during, you know, in contemporary times. But like in hindsight, people see him as like this thing, and the orchestra is still very popular. So just trying to understand, like, just taking that metaphor to a crazy degree and having fun with it, and bringing in other jazz musicians like Jackie McLean and these other moments as well.
So I feel like I've understood maybe like 80% of the things you've said. Because the technical language of skating I find to be beautiful, but not completely scrutable.
Yeah.
So I do have a sort of speed round of questions. Some of them are pro and con. What was the first kind of legit pair of skate shoes you remember owning, or your favorite?
First legit were Airwalks.
Okay.
Yeah, but this was '96, so they were still like somewhat relevant. But I got them from a mall. So first skate shoes I really owned were a pair of Yes. Yeah.
Nike SBs, pro or con? As a culture.
You like double down on it. Oh man.
I think this doubles as me asking how old you are.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, older. 30. I'll be 40 in November. Let's just say pro.
Okay. Longboards, yay or nay?
Sure.
How do you feel when you see a rollerblader?
Like, you know, like, I hope you don't fall. Like, just being strapped in, this is not appealing. Snowboarding or rollerblading, being strapped in just seems terrifying.
Skating in Northern or Southern California?
Northern.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you relinquished, I guess I didn't know you were, I mean, based on your first book, I should have remembered this, but I guess I associate you with the Bay Area. So are you relinquishing all ties with Southern California?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just when it comes to skateboarding, similar to New York, like the spots are so much harder in the Bay, and it's so much harder to kind of to land and document a trick in the Bay and the spots are just terrifying. Yeah, I mean, everything is like on a 45-degree angle pretty much. So, yeah.
Okay, so you earlier mentioned watching skate videos, hearing like a Gang Starr song, thinking like I should check that out. What do you think about when skate videos use like kind of unconventional music?
That's a big debate right now. There's a lot of like Kate Bush right now in skate videos, and everything from Kate Bush to like Pinback. Like it's a wild spectrum, you know. I say, you know, try it out. Why not? You know, maybe not the same Kate Bush song or Kate Bush album. Like,
What's the hot Kate Bush?
Oh man, I don't know the name. If anyone knows the name in the audience, don't be shy. Feel free to shout it out. I know somebody
Is it
will know.
Wuthering Heights?
Running
That'd
up
be
the
kind
hill
of.
song.
Yeah, I think right Wuthering Heights.
I think it is
Is it
Wuthering Heights.
Wuthering Heights?
Yeah, it is Wuthering Heights.
Fucking weird.
Yeah, it's been used a couple times. But yeah, I'd say pro. I'm pro for it. Yeah.
I have other questions, but they might get a little problematic for you. So, I wanted to talk really quickly about the cover of the book.
Sure.
The cover depicts one of your late friends, AJ. Right? And I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the image of the cover, but also, I guess, what you can learn about someone by spending the day skating with them.
Yeah. Yeah. So the cover is it's the same photo twice. It's a 35 millimeter disposable scan. I lost the negative of my friend Andrew, kind of holding his elbows after falling, and I think he was the first skater I skated with who got like really pissed at tricks, but then he also looked really good on a skateboard. He landed tricks very smoothly. He bent his knees. He wore chinos, like khaki chinos as a 13-year-old, which is like very bold. And then to skate in that is also very bold with like some bright red shoes. And he was just like the coolest, one of the first stylish skateboarders I met. You know, someone who wanted to do a trick again to make it look better and stuff like that. And if you don't encounter that, you know, you don't know it, you know, or maybe you read about it in a skate magazine, but again, like the editorial at the time wasn't that behind the scenes with it. And I chose the photo because when I think about, as I read about it in the introduction of the book, like, and as we talked about with the first point about ephemera, it's not only things, it's people. And some of these boards were given to you by people that are no longer on this earth. Some of the tricks you learned were taught by people that are no longer on this earth. And, you know, honoring my friend AJ was kind of the least I could do, because those are the sessions that when I think about the why of like, why and when did skateboarding matter to me, it's like, those were the sessions. As much as today, you know, like the ability to go out to borrow my friend's board and go skate, you know, a couple days in New York as a 39-year-old is pretty amazing, you know. I don't take it for granted, which is to say. So I think that photo is a kind of a reminder of me of like, just when things crystallized for me and when all this kind of intersection of like music and film and writing and friends and people that made those things help. You know, this guy also was the guy making you the VHS mixtape with 5 different 30-minute skate videos on it and dubbing each other tapes of different bands, a lot of ska stuff. But you know, he was kind of that guy. And so I just wanted to honor him with that photo. And to be honest, well, it was inspired by Stay True as well. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for this book. It's an incredible. I mean, I feel like you just summed up your own book incredibly, because it is about sort of connections, relationships, friendships, but also just how skating can become this sort of consciousness expanding activity that, I don't know, just compels you to see space or the possibilities of life differently. So thank you so much for this work. We have time for some questions from the audience. Anyone has any?
You mentioned those tapes and specifically ska. Can you fill in the gaps there and tell us which ska bands were on those tapes?
So the first question is about your love of ska. So what were some of the ska jams on those tapes? And
Oh yeah, no, it's It was like a cherry red see-through cassette. It was like a D60, like maybe 30 and 30. No, it was a D90. It was Aquabat's first album, Return of the Aquabats, which is a perfect title for your first album, Return of the Aquabats, on the B side, and then the first A side was the self-titled Save Ferris album. And they were kind of local heroes. Yeah, like our local bands would open up for them and be like, oh shit, they made it, you know. Yeah, very much ditched school to go see Real Big Fish shows and stuff like that. Yeah. Thank you, Sam.
Sorry, I don't mean to like punish you here, but can you point out an instance of ska being used in a skate video? Because
Yeah.
I was wondering if that like noticeable absence like had you kind of drift away from one scene to another.
Another question about ska. This one asking you to, what was it, identify particular videos that use ska music? Okay.
There is a couple like kind of random ones, and like 411 Video Magazine was this thing that was literally like a monthly or bi-monthly magazine that would like be a VHS magazine of skateboarding, so it'd be like profiles and spot check and stuff like that. And they had like some like Goldfinger Superman stuff in there, and that was like in Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and everyone, that was like the ska song for skaters.
Was that tongue in cheek though?
It was kind of tongue in cheek.
I have to repeat the questions for the live
Oh,
stream. There's a question about whether that was an ironic use of ska.
Hopefully it was an ironic use. But I will say that there was one commercial in a 411 that used some really dank like Augustus Pablo dub. I think it was for a Half-Life clothing. They were like a hemp clothing brand circa 1997.
Very familiar with the concept, having gone to Berkeley.
Yes. I'm sure the threads were very available on Telegraph Avenue at that time. And that very much got me into like, what is this? And I got into like kind of dub music that way. So maybe that was my ska revenge, was I got more into the original. Thank you.
Yeah, over there.
Is there a spot in the Bay Area that you return to regularly to skate?
Is there a spot in the Bay Area that you return regularly to?
Yeah, in the East Bay, in Oakland, Rockridge Curbs is like the parking lot that I mentioned before. Great spot, and go there all the time. In San Francisco, Embarcadero, like Justin Herman Plaza, and it's very, all its different forms. It's still fun to skate. And yeah, those are, it's always fun to just roll over the bricks. Like that alone is fun, so. Thank you.
Other questions? I have a bunch of like really dumb questions.
That's cool.
So you probably have like this many old boards.
Probably.
How do you know when you're done with a board? Are they all broken, or?
Some are just kept around for like, this graphic's still cool enough that I just want to hold on to it. And like I throw them out, like I throw some out seasonally, I guess you could say, like spring cleaning kind of thing. But a lot of them are like, the childhood ones are very much ones that like AJ may have given me, or friends may have given me, or skate shops that are no longer, like defunct skate shops that made their own boards, companies that are no longer around. You can imagine the shelf life of a skateboard company could be anywhere from 10 years to 6 months. So, and even some skaters that are like, maybe like pro for a minute and then just gone. But I'm definitely trying to get rid of more stuff than keep, but it's tough.
Like you mentioned earlier, if you had some like limited edition board or something, do you feel like you skate differently if you have some, I don't know, I'm gonna be very ironic and say like a Supreme Damien Hirst like bullshit board, like does that actually matter, or is it purely just for resellers?
Oh, I think in that context, it's very much for resellers. You know what I mean? Like,
But like, does the board give you more confidence?
oh, well, different boards. Yeah, I mean, if there's a board that has a certain shape that you like, or a certain like concave, like the kind of nature of the tail and things like that. Like the width of a board is very much a big thing for skateboarders. So that stuff very much matters. But that said, like one thing, I'm trying to be less precious around that, and so like, doing stuff for the book recently, I've been calling friends that are in town and being like, hey, do you have a board I can use? And just kind of being less precious and skating setups that are not my normal setups, and just kind of rolling with the flow that way, knowing how particular I can be with like my own stuff. I mean, you can, like, skating is so granular, whether it's cracks in the sidewalk or, I mean, the way we measure our boards is from like an 8-inch to a 8.25, 8.38, 8.5. Like, it's that granular sometimes. But when it comes to the reseller stuff or boards on the wall, like, that's one thing. You can just have confidence knowing that, like, your board feels good and that's a board that you like or the graphic you like. Sometimes when it flips under you, you can kind of catch a glimpse of it. That's kind of fun. But when it comes down to it, I mean, whether it's a shop board or a lot of these boards are also made from the same manufacturers too. So when you kind of pull back the veil of where skateboards are coming from, it becomes quite apparent that a lot of these things are coming from similar sources. Yeah.
I feel like throughout the years, like we've had a lot of like changes in with like how social media, technology, and even how media portrays skating. And I kind of wanted to ask, and you touched on this with like how even skate videos now have like different music, but what do you think has like changed throughout skate culture, and what do you also think has stayed the same, and how do you differentiate between the two?
So how has skate culture sort of changed over the social media age and sort of different periods since, let's say, in the past like 15, 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think we're still seeing like the effects of it too. I feel like in terms of the industry and brands, like it's definitely globalized, like in a lot of different ways. Like there's, you know, very relevant European brands like Polar that like have great American distribution but that leads to having more skate videos that are showing you the world, like all, you know, with more brands around the world, whether it's like Tight Booth in Japan or like Palace in London or Magenta out in Europe. The more companies you have around the world, the more skate content you have, and then by way of the digital, it's going straight to like, and like, you know, publications like Thrasher moving to digital and keeping analog going in like in a nice fashion. You're able to see it that much more quickly. There's still this ongoing debate of like, when you release a full-length skate video, do you put out a DVD or does it only live online? And it's kind of this thing in the age of music rights too, like skate videos are getting taken down after a certain amount of time, and so that finality of a skate video is kind of gone in a digital age sometimes. But overall, I feel like social media and stuff like this has led to more people skateboarding, period. And that's led to more women, more trans folks, more gender non-conforming folks, more black and brown folks, more folks across the economic scale that are able to skate, more after school programs that are giving out free boards like to anyone, you know? So more people are beginning to kind of understand that skateboarding is not a menace and that it's a culture. And it sounds ridiculous saying that in 2024, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with like Olympic inclusion or anything like that, but just over the years, the awareness and the ability to see it through, you know, online and digital sources more, I think is just allowing folks to see, in addition to like after school programs and stuff like that, like skateboarding is like a positive thing that people around the world are doing, and that I, as a young boy, girl, whoever, can do it too, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, given that it's a youth dominant sport and activity, so how does one age out of the activity?
So given that it's a youth-oriented pursuit, how does one age out, or are there models of people aging gracefully?
Well, like in the professional context, I think there are skaters that are aging gracefully, and that, you know, have like a Tony Hawk has a big enough platform to show how he is aging gracefully. You know? So he just put out a part in his 50s, and it was fairly well received in the industry. And I would politely push back on the idea that skateboarding is a young activity. I think it's just an activity. It starts when you're young, but I feel like we're seeing more and more skaters skate at all sorts of ages. You know, it begins young for sure, or could start young, but there's nothing stopping someone in their 30s from starting to skate today, or in their 40s or their 50s or beyond. You know, it's a toy. You know, it's a toy that anyone can use, and you can adjust the toy for your body and your needs. You know. But that said, I think I am 39 and I'm not jumping down handrails, I'm not jumping down, I know my lane, you know, I'm skating curves and ledges and nothing higher than, you know, stuff that we can easily jump over as a pedestrian in a sense, right? So it's also understanding the limits, but also like within those limits, there's new strengths and new abilities that you find and new tricks that you learn with those new kind of limitations. For instance, in the book I talk a lot about learning slappies, which doesn't involve ollie, the act of popping your board and giving yourself like this levitation effect. It's more so bashing into an obstacle that's low enough to be bashed into. And that, however violent that sounds, is actually somewhat better on your body and your lower back than dipping down and popping and elevating. So as we age on a skateboard, and as skateboarding is still very young, we're starting to see how to age on a skateboard, you know, like, yeah. Thank you.
You talked earlier about the perception that skateboarding has in like public culture. And I'm wondering, as a skater who's also a writer, did you ever find yourself negotiating in-group codes that didn't necessarily need to be made public? And if so, how did you make decisions about that on the page? Like what to give us and what to keep for yourself as a skater?
So it's a question about sort of being inside the culture and trying to figure out how to negotiate the sort of like in-group codes and sort of the degree to which you would have to explain it to, you know, someone like me or someone who's not as familiar with the codes and the language.
For sure, and I think, thank you for that question. That was one of the biggest challenges of writing Chipped, you know, is like how much do I give and how much do I keep. I like that verbiage because it's the question of like why is writing about skateboarding hard is like you want to keep those things because of how, you know, like the term lurking and stuff like that like means something very particular to skateboarders. I feel like the beauty of the essay is that each essay can create a world in which you're dictating these weird rules of engagement where like Sun Ra is now a skateboarder and, you know, these things are happening and we just have to deal with it, right? And it's kind of my job as the writer to figure out how you deal with this world that I'm putting in front of you. So it's like, how much information can I give you versus like where do I want the reader to work and kind of find whether it's through the rhythm of the prose or the type of vernacular or the physicality I'm trying to describe. If I'm not giving them a lot of information, what do I want them to feel? Do I want them to feel more so like I don't want them to even know the term, I just want them to know I'm bashing into a curb or something like that. Like, you know, and introducing even a character like Sun Ra requires like an element of explaining and introducing of like, this is who this person is. But again, like I kind of relied on the structure of the essay to be like, each essay to be a world in which I can introduce like whatever degree of information I can, but given that I had to make sure that I had some kind of like finality at the end of like, yes, you just experienced this whole essay about Sun Ra flipping over cars. This is the reason why, or like, you know, this is what it means to me. So sometimes I was very, you know, it's kind of a little bit of both. Like there's essays in the book where I very much break down what an ollie is, and there's other essays where it's just like you're just kind of riding with me, no pun intended. You know, you're just kind of rolling with it, no pun intended again. Thanks for that. I think it's still something I'm trying to negotiate. I think every time we write about skateboarding, we're negotiating that.
Do you have a question? Last question.
It's like a follow-up question on the age. I was wondering if, like a Sun Ra thing, it's a meta stupid question. If you were born in the 2010s, would you still have like this love of skateboarding, or would you had picked another interest, or, you know, because everything's so much polluted and diluted these days, so.
Yeah, like if you were born in the 2010s, do you think you would have kind of gravitated toward this form of expression?
Hopefully, I hope so. You know what I mean? It's very much, it's more present and palpable, and kind of this scene and culture I think is better now than it was when I was growing up. So I would love to grow up right now as a skater. If I was a 14-year-old skateboarder right now, I think it's a great time to start or to continue, or even to be a 24-year-old, you know, whatever age. So I feel like the culture is in a better place right now, where than ever, and there's even more examples to kind of, you know, online or print even still, that are showing you what skateboarding is or can be. Yeah, I'm curious how I would react to certain like I don't know, like it's a very different experience like putting a VHS in your parents' TV set that the entire family can hear versus like, this is tight, you know? So I'm sure that would be different. Maybe I would be listening to more Kate Bush. Yeah. There was one question. Thank you. I'm sneaking right here.
All right, last question.
With skateboarding being so rooted in play, and you've called the skateboard a toy, how do you go about writing without completely infantilizing the act.
Mhm.
Because you're writing for audiences who are obviously much older than the 12-year-old skateboarder you once were.
Oh yeah, so that's cool. Question was like, if I'm talking to skateboarding about it, if I'm referring to the skateboard as a toy, how do I write about skateboarding without infantilizing it, knowing that it kind of is rooted in this childhood thing? That's a good question, and I think like there is this kind of weird Peter Pan complex within skateboarding, right? Where like you think before a session, you're always thinking like, oh, I'm gonna go to this spot and I'm gonna do these 5 tricks, no problem. You know, what I mean, like this should be good. You show up and then you maybe do half of a trick and you're like, okay, I'm going home with a partial limp. This is great. Which is the expectations versus reality, right? But it's the toy keeps everyone humble. It's kind of like this universal object that keeps all skateboarders humble. And I think every skater knows that when they're seeing someone cruise down the street or they're seeing someone like, you know, really nailing at a skate park, even when whatever moment that is, like they know at any particular moment things could go right, things could go wrong, and this toy can very much not be so fun. So I don't know, I feel like the act of skateboarding keeps skateboarders so humble, but also the toy nature keeps it so joyous and so like dreamy that I kind of kept that duality in mind writing Chipped of like, how can I keep it, you know, maintain the joy and the inspiration, but also show that like this toy can humble any of us that step on it at any time.
Thanks to Molly and the great folks at Books Are Magic. Thanks to Jose. Thanks for maybe signing books in that little booth over there. So don't mob him this year. Thanks again.
Thank you for that outro, Juan. That was basically everything I had to say. So I'm just going to repeat it all. If you're still with us on the live stream, you can buy a copy by clicking the link in the live stream description. For those of you with us tonight, we've got plenty of extra copies available at the register where you checked in. We also have some copies of Juan's fantastic memoir, Stay True, which I highly recommend checking out as well. Yes, Jose will be around to sign and personalize your books. That's going to be happening where my lovely coworker Alexa is pointing to. Thank you, Alexa. So y'all can line up where she's standing. Go back to the other shelf. The line always has a mind of its own. Thank you all so much again for coming out tonight. Thank you to everyone who has questions. Thank you to all for tonight. That's all. Enjoy your evening, folks.